Thank you all for being here today. We are excited to have Dr. Megan Lewis here with us today. And really our hope with these events are that they're linking your career interests to professionals in those industries right here in Iowa. But before we get started, I would just like to say a quick hello as your host. My name is Jill Hoyk. I work a part of the work-based learning team here at DMAC. And so thank you all for tuning in. I would also like to mention at DMAC, we do have a science and math pathway that will kind of get you your first 2 years of a 4-year degree. And then of course, it would transferring on to a 4-year college and maybe even some schooling beyond that too. Dr. Lewis will share her educational journey with us too as well. But for those of you interested, you can look at that on our website. But without further ado, I would love to introduce our professional. Like I mentioned, we have Dr. Megan Lewis here with us today. Dr. Lewis recently changed roles and companies, so we're excited to kind of learn about her change here. But currently, she serves as the equipment and automated field sensing lead for Bayer. And so, like I mentioned, we will kind of get into what that all means here in a little bit. But Dr. Lewis, thank you again for joining us today. We're excited to get to know you. And I will just kind of open it up here. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit further and chat a little bit about what got you into this career field. Is it something you always knew you wanted to do? Or is it something you went to college and kind of, maneuvered your way around? But we'd love to hear how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me today. I always get excited talking to our future scientists and our future leaders who are going to change the world. So my story is a little bit different, like most stories that you hear, but I grew up in a small town in North Dakota. And my parents, science teacher, music teacher. I grew up in my dad's science lab since age 4, but I also was super passionate about music. So you think about through high school, I did all the fun, I call it the nerd stuff, right? So I was science fair, speech, drama, music, etc. But I always wanted to make a difference in the community. And I was always, just drawn towards agriculture and helping our local farmers. So when I finished up high school, science for research, agriculture projects, I then had the tough decision, like most of you are probably going to encompass soon, is, what do I want to do when I grow up? And full disclosure, I'm still deciding what I want to do when I grow up. So I will share my journey, but know that it's this ever-growing journey. So I actually triple majored in my undergrad. I triple majored in opera performance and percussion and piano, but I also did crop science because, again, really tied to the farmer and giving back to the farmers and local community. I decided to keep music as a hobby and really go on with master's PhD in plant breeding and genetics, working with barley and corn and just trying to give back and feed the growing population. It was just something that just really inspired me and excited me. I also thought for sure I would be a college professor. So what most don't know is I also have my degree in college teaching. I got during the end of my PhD. Well, again, detours, construction zones, we all take different paths. And it landed me with the industry instead of academia, because in industry, I can lead cutting edge research, innovation. I can, meet amazing people across the globe, and I could be an adjunct professor. Win-win. So I kicked off my journey as a soybean breeder, in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And again, just full transparency, the family and I are on reload number 7. So I don't expect you, there's no quiz at the end to remember what I did, just to help you all understand the journey. So pure breeder, soybean, plant geneticist, plant scientist, we then relocated to Minnesota for corn breeding. And so really walking cornfields, understanding the germplasm, and really trying to build hybrids that would help the farmers. So the seed that goes inside the bag, I was the creator of that seed. Cool. I then was recognized in 2013 that I was a different scientist. Yes, I was analytical, I'm a scientist, I'm a plant breeder. But a leader approached me and said, Megan, you're a different scientist. You like people. And they just said, hey, let's try this new journey. So the family and I reload to South Dakota. And then that is where I was able to build a multi-million-dollar research facility from the ground up. I still was a scientist. I picked up people leadership, and now I picked up construction safety, building this state-of-the-art research facility and testing footprint across South Dakota. I then picked up global responsibilities at the same time for winter nursery across Chile, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Mexico. Fun, as you can tell, many different hats I was wearing. And that was an amazing 4 years. Fast forward, after that, the same leader that approached me in Minnesota said, hey, we have your next opportunity. And the family and I relocated near Budapest, Hungary. So we traveled to Europe. So we're located 2 hours south of Budapest in Szeged, Hungary. And I led all research and commercial for corn and sunflower. Amazing experience. We can dive into those questions too if there's time. And then after that, we got back stateside, and then we had 2 additional relocations in Iowa. So very, operations roles for Algona, Iowa in the northern part. And then I got back to my global leadership roots in 2019. And because I have this need to be green and growing and continuously learning, I decided to join crop protection. So I had my plant geneticist, plant breeding hat on, really focused on the plant cycle. And I decided to go, hey, what are we putting on those plants? And how does that process work? Meet with marketing commercial. So I jumped into crop protection in 2019 as the innovation lead. This is wicked cool because now, even though I'm a plant breeder, I started diving into drones, robotics, engineer teams, mobile sensors, cameras. How can we do our science safer, more efficient, and enhance our data quality? So that was been my focus for the last 3 years. And again, this itch to be green and growing, I had an amazing journey at Corteva. And I was just ready for Megan's next adventure. And I saw this opportunity and I met with an amazing team at Bayer. And it was just something that you know when you know, and it just feels right in your heart and your gut. And so I took a leap of faith. Like, I always challenge myself to do one thing outside my comfort zone every single year. And this is definitely outside my comfort zone. After 10 years at Corteva, I decided to jump and really start meeting new people, building my network even further, and diving into a new culture. And it's been fantastic so far. I'm on day 8 of my new role. So moved from innovation, I now lead the equipment and automated field sensing team. So still really new, but really diving into some of those similar innovation components and how do we enhance operational effectiveness and efficiency across the globe. And what I can say, it's been, I've been fed with a fire hose the last 8 days, but it's been fantastic. The culture is great. The team's great. It's human focused, human element, career development. And I'm just buckling my seatbelt and diving in. So we are going on reload number 7, but it's been fun. And as you can see through the journey, I started out as a pure scientist, but my roles have morphed me more into people leadership, strategy building, and innovation. And that's the beauty of just getting into the door, finding something you're passionate about, but don't feel like you're going to get stuck. Don't feel that if you pick this degree, that you're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. Your degree gets you inside the door. And then you get to be the driver of your career, and you get to determine what you want to do when you grow up. So that's just my day job. We can get into my night job eventually, STEM outreach and all that fun stuff. And I even have a life-size statue. So we always can dive into that as well. That's just my career journey. I'm honored to be here today. And so let's dive into the questions, as that intro was super long.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I think, though, for younger students that maybe are tuning in, can you talk about why plant breeding and making sure that everything is, why you actually dive into that and why that's important than just throwing plants out there and letting it do its thing? Like, why it's important to genetically understand that?
Yeah, so when you think about plant breeding, and if you're familiar with farms, or if you're just on a road trip and you're traveling around and you see plants in the field, you probably also notice that we have a lot of weather events. And so this is an example that I use that people can really wrap their heads around. And usually, unfortunately, when a weather event goes around, let's focus on corn. Corn standing straight up, strong winds, corn's lodged over. Well, you're not going to get the yield or the output on that crop that you would have got if it didn't fall over. So the cool thing about plant breeding is we get to figure out why is that falling over and how can we make that stand up. And then that's where we just pick those really, really strong parents to help with the standability and help that crop stand up. Now, the other thing is too, you keep taking that a step further. You have insects, you have disease. Plant breeding allows us to feed the growing population. And when you think about it, it's selecting those strong parents, whether it is disease resistance or insect resistance, or if it has different traits or components, we get to build that sweet package into one. And then that's ultimately going to help the farmer feel more confident when they go out to the field season and they're going to go plant, that they are excited to plant because they know that they did everything in their power to select the best germplasm for their fields, for their acreage, for their farm. And so plant breeding is, I'm really big about all hands touch the kernel of seed. And this is what I say, plant breeding is more than just the breeder, right? It's the team. There's an entire team that we just don't say, hey, here's a cross, here's a really cool plant. No, that has gone through years of testing. And it's the teams that plant and they harvest, they collect data, they analyze it. There's so much that goes into that one kernel, or the kernels that go into the bag, that some people just don't, sometimes they just don't know. And so plant breeding is really cool because you get to blend biology, you get to blend, why did I pick plant breeding? If you remember the beginning, I love music, I love art, I have a creative mind. Plant breeding allows me to blend art and science. And the art part is, how do I go about selecting? How do I look at a plant? How do I collect data? Now, I did that a lot with boots on the ground, me in the field, right? Probably starting my career 10 years ago. But now you get to add the +1, the innovation. How do we enhance data quality? Well, we get to take images from up above and drones or satellite imagery, or even just images with your cell phone. And then we get to utilize those images and understand the pixels, understand what's going on, tell a deeper story. And that's what's exciting, is that we're not replacing the breeder, we're ultimately enhancing the breeder and giving them the tools they need to be successful and for the teams to be successful. So plant breeding, I would say the +1, if you're interested in plant genetics, if you're interested in biology, you're interested in statistics and understanding the greater photo, I would say I would push you towards plant breeding +1. And that +1 is really around the digital space. Again, this is Megan's opinion and Megan's thoughts, is not just plant breeding or crop science. It's really good to have a foundation in agronomy. And that can be found at a lot of different institutions, universities, 2-year, 4-year, etc. Having that strong foundation and what you love to do, and then diving into that +1. Is that geospatial? Is that understanding the digital component, or taking images, or flying a drone? Think about how you can have an impact. If you're passionate about agriculture, have that forward vision cap on and figure out how you can have and find your +1 that's going to add so much benefit to the agriculture arena. So breeding is fun because, just to wrap that all up, is that it's not just, selecting a parent and growing the next progeny. What it is you get to figure out, how can we bundle the best traits into a package for the farmer? How can we help the different crops stand up? How can we help them fight off disease? How can we help them fight off insects? It is so much more, and that's the fun part. It's very diverse and it's exciting.
Yeah, I went to a place where they were researching corn, and just to see all the diseases that were in this one packet, and they just, all the research and the way, the logistics of how that all works, it's mind blowing. Just for those watching, it's mind blowing. Never knew anything about it, and I was blown away. So I know you have a doctorate degree, but with others that you have worked with to kind of get into this field, what type of training? Is it typically you have to have a 4-year degree? And then do most people in the industry have a master's and doctorate, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to really having your pro and your con list. Like, what do you like to do? What are your points you can live without? It takes people of all backgrounds. And I truly, really mean this. A lot of my friends, they have 4-year degrees in industry and they love what they do. They are boots on the ground, planting, collecting data, harvesting, flying drones. If you like just being out in nature, being out in the field, then yes, you can find what you love to do with a 4-year degree. In some cases, even 2 years, depending on, again, what you want to do. What excites you? Do you like fixing the equipment that goes into the field? Do you like collecting the data? Now, if you want to take it a step further and you want to start analyzing that data and you want to start thinking and building predictions and strategy, then yes, master's and PhD, I would recommend you just diving in and understanding the scientific method at just a deeper level, because it will serve you well. But I have to say one thing is, thinking about it, I started out as a pure scientist, PhD, plant breeding genetics, what I wish I would have had is psychology, sociology, understanding of people, because it really is the people that makes the network tick and it makes the network work. And so I've been doing my own research on the side and trying to keep myself green and growing, but that is one area. I digress. But that's one area that I wish I would have been able to dive into deeper. But yes, overall, there's opportunities for, 4-year master's, PhD. It really depends what you want to do and what level you want to take it. And me, for example, I love being in the field. I was in the field for 20 plus years. It was awesome. I've always grew up in a field. And one thing that I noticed is that some of my core skills and strengths on my skill set finder has always been around strategy and people and visionary thinking. And that is where I was like, okay, I need to play my cards right. I need to play to my strengths, and how can I even strengthen those strengths at a higher level? And so then I actually chose to do people leadership. I actually chose to think about the future of where agriculture is, not just today, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it's been fantastic. But that is my personality, right? So for that type of role, you're going to want to do higher education, such as a master's or PhD, just to get into the door, and then you can take it. I can tell you, I'm even looking at expanding my skill set, whether I go to law or MBA or executive MBA, because again, there's so many different components that you can't plan for everything. But if you're adaptable, you're flexible, you're willing to pivot and change course in the moment and try something new, then I think you're going to be unstoppable. It's going to be fun to see.
That's great advice. That's awesome. Dr. Lewis, what would you say is your biggest win this far in your career? If you had to choose maybe one or two, what's a big win for you?
Failures or wins? I'm just kidding.
Well, scientist, I mean, that's how you learn, right?
Yeah, no, tons of failures. That's how you learn. I'm really big about sharing my failures too, just because that makes us stronger and makes us better. I would say one of my biggest wins, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of smiles if people watch this, because I've had a lot of cool new technologies deployed, implemented around the world. Just different projects that have hit the ground from ground zero to ground successful. That's been really fun to watch and see. But when it comes to the core of who I am, my biggest win was taking a chance on hiring an employee back in South Dakota. And I say this because this employee, I'm going to tell you the story. This employee did not come in with a master's or PhD. This employee had a 4-year degree and was applying for a master's level position. But I saw potential in this employee. I saw excitement. I saw growth. I saw opportunity. And so I owned it. I took full accountability. And it was risky, right? Because everybody's saying, no, you need this master's, PhD. And I said, no, this person has what it takes to get to this level. And so I hired this person on, and I call it the diamond in the rough, right? You hire this person on, you grow with this person 4 or 5 years, and now to see that person take flight and leading a team of teams and, leading drone operations, leading a ton of areas in precision breeding. I know this may sound funny, but that's like one of my greatest wins. Is I love to see my people excel. I love to see them excel above me. I love to see them soar and inspire and champion other individuals as well. So my biggest wins are around people leadership. Full transparency, what did I have a hand in doing to help mentor and coach? I didn't always succeed, full transparency. I've also had people leadership learns. I call them, how do we leverage, pivot, and learn from some of our failure moments? But it makes us stronger in who we are. So that's on the people side, is just watching somebody that probably did not feel that they could do it. The imposter syndrome was setting in, and helping them show them that they got it, they can do it, and they're going to fly. And it was so fun to finally see them spread their wings. And then they didn't need me anymore, which is totally great. I'm just a mentor on the side, but it was amazing to watch them take flight. Some other, science projects, I would, something that's near and dear to my heart is when I said I was a plant breeder. I was a corn breeder really close to where I grew up. And it was really fun when one of my high school classmates would call and say, hey, is this your hybrid, that was growing, and I was just always hoping, again, from the beginning, that it was standing up, that it was disease-free, it was insect-free, but just having that connectivity and actually building something that relates close to home, building something that my high school classmates could grow or touch or see, or know the impact that we're all working together to feed the growing population. And then my third one, I would have to say, is around community outreach. And so I'm really passionate. We didn't get to it, but community and STEM outreach is really the core of who I am. I was so grateful to be selected as If Then ambassador. It's if she could see it, then she can be it, and it's a AAAS, American Association of Science. And through those opportunities, I was able to showcase agriculture with actress Miranda Cosgrove at a deeper level on CBS to say, hey, this is precision farming. This is what it looks like, to help show individuals around the world how cool agriculture can be and how cool of a career opportunity it is. So to really start, reaching a more diverse audience from inclusion and diversity standpoint, but also to get people excited and ignite their spark about STEM, and most importantly about agriculture and feeding the population. And so I have many areas in STEM that are near and dear to my heart, but my husband and I co-founded a STEM camp. And I was able to now blend some of my core big rocks, my family, number one, non-negotiable, and also my passion for science and inspiring the future generation. And so if I had to bucket some of my quick wins, it's around people, it's around cool tech deployment, hybrid creation, and then also how can I do what I do best by blending my family into it. And then we can learn together too, because they might be future leaders too. You just never know. So it's always fun, but my core themes are around people and watching them excel and be successful.
Yeah. I can imagine being a leader and putting your name on somebody and having them excel. What a big win that would be, for sure. So on the flip side of that, what are some of the challenges with being a scientist, would you say? Probably a lot of challenges day by day, putting out fires and such, but any challenges that come to mind on your day-to-day? Well, probably now with your new role, but what are some challenges that you face?
Yeah. So I can't speak of my new role currently, the challenges, right? Because I just got in like day 8. That's called a learning curve challenge right now. For me, honestly, is just trying to learn new acronyms and new teams and new people, new networks. But I would say challenges that I faced as a scientist is you got to think about this, right away. I'm a quick win person, and I find quick wins, long-term wins. It's just how I strategically think. And being a plant breeder, I had to accept failure at a greater level, knowing that I would find and I would select, when I find different parents, I build different combinations of new plants. Not all of them goes through. One will probably go through. And then immediately just recognizing that it took, 7 to 8 years to reach the patent side. You think about all of the work you go in to building a product and then finally reaching that finish line. Even though you had thousands of amazing ideas and crosses, it's that one that actually reached the finish line, 7 years later. And so as a scientist, my heart would also just sink if there was a huge weather event, or if a field was lost out, if we lost data for the year. That happened, or we had deer or bears or whatever type of thing take over the field. So I would say, as a scientist, it was really about, we were at the disposal of the environment, at the weather, but then also mistakes happen. And when I say mistakes happen, I'm even accountable. I'm human. You can even have issues planting, and you can have issues harvesting. And when I say planting, when you put a seed into the ground from a research perspective, the machine can clog up, and it may put the wrong seed in the wrong spot in the field. And then that also could delay your entire process. So as a scientist, it's really been around data quality and data collection. But then the biggest thing that I've learned is that if you build a solid, again, around the people, if you build a solid network and you build a solid team where you trust, you respect each other, you're able to pivot and adapt and come out of those situations stronger and better. And it may be rough and it may stink, but the thing is that you're doing it together, and then the outcome is phenomenal. And then that's what I've really realized, is that no matter what you do, if it's agriculture or not, build your network, make every interaction count, and treat people the way that you want to be treated. I know it goes back to kindergarten, about be kind, be awesome, be you, but seriously, that is the core of any position, is that you need to bring your best self to work, because when you do, you inspire others to be their best versions. And honestly, the team and the network capabilities, doesn't matter what area, what scientific discipline, or even just technical discipline, you will be strong, you will fly if you have your team. And so I'm really big team centric and people centric, but that's something that I think it's really important to wrap your minds around, is that, yes, I'm a scientist, but a scientist is not successful alone. A scientist is successful with a group and a group of team and amazing colleagues that push each other up, inspire each other, and just really help each other excel to the next level. And so that's something that I would love to say on that part.
Yeah, that's great. I know we've talked a lot about you as a scientist, as a plant breeder, so I'll kind of stay on theme with that. I know you've advanced to other roles, but just for those watching, I think they're really intrigued with that part. Could you talk about like maybe like a day-to-day when you did that, what that looked like for you? You know, you mentioned that it took 7 to 8 years to get to the patent level. So day-to-day for those 7 to 8 years, like what did that look like? That's so intriguing.
Yeah, the thing that I loved about, and I still love, right, because I get to work with plant breeders every day, is I would say the diversity of day to day. So not one day was ever the same from another day. And I could say the same thing at corporate America right now, sitting in an office with strategy and people. But you think about plant breeding is I really appreciated the ability to, you're all going to laugh, but just to go to the field with no cell service and just be with the plants. And that's really just, boots on the ground, seeing what's going on, understanding the locations, understanding the farmers. I always loved stopping and talking to farmers and really building that customer relation to say, hey, what are you seeing? What are you hoping to see? Any type of things that would help funnel and build our stronger research program. So as a plant breeder, you do a lot of computer work. You work with the statisticians daily. You get to work with the genotyping side, and that is where you get to understand the genetics and the DNA of the plants that are coming through at a greater level. And you get to blend stats and genetics and understanding the market and the commercial side and understanding the farmer's inputs all into one role. So when I say diverse, one day you may be out in a field trying to understand what happened at an environment or looking at a location. The next day, you might be analyzing or looking at the results from drone phenotyping data, or looking at the results from imagery, or trying to understand, how can we take this data and make it relatable to everybody on the team. And the next day, you could just be saying, hey, we need to innovate. This process that we're doing is really archaic. It doesn't help us advance to the next level. And so you get to be an innovation scientist. You get to think about new technology that's out there, and how are you going to bring it in successfully, and not just bring in tech for the bringing in tech case. You get to do the root cause problem solving. So really understand, not just, hey, we have this tech, figure out how to work it. No, what is our problem and what tools are we going to use to solve that problem? So you get to put on your problem solving hat. And then also you get to put on the team. You get to inspire a team that's going to be planting your material, harvesting, collecting data, flying drones. You get to have a front row seat at all those operations, and you get to determine, how do you want it all to blend and integrate, and how do you all want it to be involved in developing a product? So you think about breeding. Yes, you may be walking a field, and that field might not just be in the US. I did a ton of field walks in Mexico, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, also, over in Europe, walking fields in Hungary and Switzerland and Germany and France, etc. You have to think about it from a global level as well. And that's the fun part that I personally love, because I'm meeting new cultures. And then, so you walk field, you get a computer time, you get people time. I like the blend. I love the diversity, that not one day was always the same. And I would have my escape route, which is the field. And I could just go out, and whether I wanted to watch our drone teams, or if I wanted to just walk fields, or if I just wanted to see new technology or demos, I love the flexibility just to go do that. And that was kind of my recharge battery moments. And so now I'm looking for those new recharge battery moments. And as I go up in leadership, to figure out how I can bring some of those boots on the ground principles to even at my level in the organization today.
Yeah, which is certainly important, right? So how many hours typically a week do you work? Does it vary week by week? And you can talk when you were a plant breeder and now being more in a leadership role too.
Well, as a plant breeder, starting out, full disclosure, right? I was a female in a male-dominated field when I started out, straight out of my, this is gonna get raw, straight out of my PhD about over 10 years ago. And so, my family, I couldn't do what I do, full transparency. My husband left his 80-hour-a-week job to be a stay-at-home dad, and just to advance my career and to help me be me. So the hours, my first 5 years, I'm not proud of because this is one of those moments where you learn and you pivot. But it was, 70 to 80 during the really peak seasons, right? I just thought that I had to be there to data crunch. Obviously, you learn how to better manage your time. You learn how to better focus on the big rocks, those priorities that are non-negotiable, and how to say no. Saying no was super hard for me because I love to do everything and be involved with everything. So saying no was a big task. So I would say on average, after we got the insane years figured out, around 50 or 60 hours, just trying to figure out, because things popped up again. I was also site leader, so I was 24/7. If anything happened at the site, from security, safety, whatever, I was operations leader, so planting teams, harvest teams. It was really dynamic. As a pure breeder, though, I'd say they probably put in 40, 50 hours, depending on the season and depending on the workload. And when I say season, we have planting, we have data collection, we have harvest. But there are some seasons where you can just kind of not pause, but maybe you could take maybe a less active role in during those months. I would say that it's interesting because as a leader, my same busy seasons as those in the field, they're busy seasons, because now that I lead equipment, it's my team that's out there, making sure that everything is working properly, that we're moving properly, that everything is going smoothly. And then if any issue pops up, we discuss it right away. So I have the same season trend. I don't know what the normal work week looks like yet. Again, day 8, but it's been pretty awesome and mindful. At my current company, they implemented this no meeting Friday afternoon, which has been fantastic. So then I can get caught up on life and projects and actually my core job. So it's been an awesome bonus. So what I can say is that the workload has shifted at multiple companies to really think about, not just putting in those 70, 80-hour weeks, but how can we be mindful in putting in a 40 or 50-hour work week? But also getting the most out of it. And how can we do that, whether it's hybrid or remote or flex? I personally appreciate and love that I'm hybrid, meaning that, I go in 1 or 2 days a week, but then I have the flexibility to, just buckle down, take some meetings from home, really get some of my big rocks accomplished for the week now. So I personally love how my schedule and workload has transformed the last 10 years. And it's the same way when I was at Corteva too, just transforming into, not going back to the way that we were, using what we learned from the pandemic and how can we do better and be better, and not just for me, but for my entire team and for all the employees too. But that only works if leaders lead by example. So if they caught me sending emails on a Saturday, my team would be like, whoa, my boss is sending me emails. I need to work. So I have to be really mindful that I will send those core emails, Monday to Friday, within the work hours, to really set the boundaries of how I want them to start focusing on their work-life balance too. So what I can say is that breeder hours are now transforming, leader hours are now transforming. And what I really appreciate being a mom is that it's really about getting back to work-life balance. And it's really about how can we do things better and how can we be better. And so by the time that you all hit the workforce, it's going to be super exciting to see what kind of flexibility and what kind of model we would be adapting, even in the agriculture space. But be mindful, agriculture, we still have to plant, we still have to harvest. There are going to be those peak seasons, but what I can say, teams have done an outstanding job to figure out maybe some during those slower seasons, how can we give back more to the employees and how can we focus on things that they want to focus on, innovation, creativity, and how can we become better? So stay tuned as the future is transforming and it's exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lewis, for touching on work-life balance and showing and leading by example that you can be successful like yourself and still have work-life balance. So thank you for touching on that. That's great. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions so you can kind of take one or both or mesh it into one. If you could start all over again, is there anything you would change about your career journey, or did you love every minute because it got you to where you are today? And then for those listening, what advice or preparation would you give them for those that are looking into the agricultural field, to be a scientist, all of that? What advice would you give young people?
Absolutely. So I will start with, would I change anything? That's a great question, right? Because I always envisioned that I would travel with my aunt's a famous musician in Germany, and so when she always recorded her next CD, I was like, oh, I could be an opera singer and I could be performing with my aunt. And no, I actually wouldn't change anything. I've music is a hobby, and it's my, when I say hobby, it's my recharge my battery moment. So I'll go play piano or sing or do a lot of church or just different performances around the community. And the reason why I wouldn't change, and maybe this just comes with time being over 10 years in industry. You know, if you had asked me 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh my goodness, yes, I would change, you know, this, and this. But 6 relocations are a lot, and we're prepping for number 7. And most look at that number and they're just like, Megan, how do you sleep at night? Like, how do you, move so much? You have a family. How do you get this all to work? The relocations, and this is my aha moment. This goes back to some of my advice too. But the relocations, like taking the chance on something outside my comfort zone, has not only benefited me professionally, it has benefited my family personally. And so my kids are resilient, and I had a core example this past weekend. This is probably touchy feely, but there's a kid at the park that was just crying because they wanted a pink ball instead of a blue ball and their world was ending. And my young daughter walks over there and says, don't sweat the small stuff. You still get to play with the ball. It's a beautiful day outside. Hey, let's go join this and do this together. So I see my kids and my children just really adapting, becoming flexible, and being able to handle situations at a greater capacity than I would have had at their age. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that I always do the check with myself, is to make sure that it's good, not just for me professionally, but it's good with my family personally, and they have to be lock and step. So no, I wouldn't change anything, because what I can say is that I loved working through the ranks. And when I say the ranks, is my very first day on the job, I was handed a broom. Not many people know this. So I was PhD, I was Dr. Megan Lewis, I was ready to change the world. And I walked into the office and my boss handed me a broom and told me to go sweep the back room. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts were at that time, again, because I was young, I just got a PhD, and all that fun stuff. But I grabbed the broom and I swept the room for about 2 to 3 hours. And I swept the room with amazing contract employees from all over the world, just that were so ingrained with like agriculture and understanding, just not only from a North Dakota or Minnesota perspective, but from a global perspective. And they taught me a lot of valuable lessons. And we grew as a team, because that was my core team at the time, that was planting and harvesting and collecting all the data that I needed as a plant breeder. And I was able to start with them on ground zero, sweeping up corn kernels off the floor and cleaning back the warehouse. What I can tell you is that when my dad passed away unexpectedly, a year after I started with that team, there was thousands of people and at that, at my dad's service. And I can remember quite vividly those 10 contract workers that I swept the floor with. They all came to my father's service. And then they said, hey, boss, we got you. We're here for you. We'll always support you. And so when I say building all those networks and interconnection, yes, they probably didn't understand all the plant breeder-esque, decisions that were made or stats decisions made, but I could tell you that we were a strong team. And when you have the right pieces of the puzzle together, you're strong no matter what. So that really solidified my jump into people leadership. And then just taking new opportunities and saying yes has really helped me jump outside my comfort zone. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, I'm never leaving North Dakota. Ever. And now, we're on relo number 7, one being a global international assignment. So it's been fantastic because I met new people, I grew as a person, and I grew as a scientist, and I grew as a leader. So now as I lead a global team, I can, I can't relate to everyone and everybody, but it gives me time to pause and give grace in a lot of situations, to be mindful of what they may be going through, understanding just different dynamics that we don't have in the US. And so it has made me a stronger, and I would just say a better equipped leader that I'm continuously learning every day. And so I wouldn't change anything because, obviously the emotional roller coaster, if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I probably was doing a self-check, like, is this the right decision for my family? But I can say today proudly that after seeing some strong examples from my family, we're a wanderlust family. We're in it together. We make home wherever we are at. And I love that for my children. Roots are important, and they have strong roots with family and all their friends that they've met along the way, but they get to develop as little leaders, and that's just fantastic. So I digress. So no, I wouldn't change anything because all the failures too made me who I am today as well. So I wouldn't change anything. Now for the advice. This is the big thing. Be continuously learning. And when I say continuously learning, don't just shy away. Like if you love agriculture and mechanics and fixing tractors, don't shy away from learning how to fly a drone or learning, how are we collecting data or how are we collecting imagery? Always have that need to be green and growing. I always tell all of my mentees, I mentor 45 individuals across the globe, and I always tell them that they need to be green and growing and not on the vine and dying. So I need to be that too. But what are you doing to, feed into that innovation? I recently started reading leadership books and, reading lawyer books, all this stuff, because I want to grow to the next level as well. So biggest advice is always be green and growing and always be continuously learning. And the second piece of advice, no matter where this takes you, you don't need to be a top CEO, CTO, or even executive director at any organization. It doesn't matter the project or the scope of project, but when you get to the top of your mountain, you're going to have many mountains that you get to the top of. Be sure to turn around and bring your team up with you. And that is something that I think sometimes gets forgotten about, but it's really, really critical, is that you didn't get there alone, and who helped you get to where you are, and make sure that they're with you on that journey. And so continuously learning, turn around on that mountain, always bring your people up with you. And then this is going to be really silly and I might get a chuckle, but don't underestimate a handwritten thank you note. And no matter what that may be, not every single, activity in your life, but some of those may be key milestone activities, just reaching out and just being genuine and saying thank you. It goes so far, and you all are going to change the world, and you might be my boss someday, so good luck. But I just have to say it's been a fantastic time just chatting and discussing about plant breeding in the future.
Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for your time. You have been wonderful. So your positive outlook on everything, even just when you were handed a broom, and what opportunity you made out of that to getting to know your staff and your people. So thank you so much for your time today, your positive outlook, and your excitement for plant breeding and beyond. So again, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck in your new role. And I hope your move goes well too as well. But thank you again for being here today.
Awesome. Thank you.